Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2017, the Chair recognizes the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Loudermilk, for 30 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't intend to take 30 minutes, but the time that I do spend is very important because I want to honor a very, very special person. But first of all, let me start off by wishing you a Merry Christmas. And I say that because as we're getting into this season, many of us are thinking about family and friends and spending Christmas time at home, which I hope to be able to do as well. But every Christmas season, my thought goes back about 73 years ago. You see, my dad was a medic in World War II. And on December the 16th, which will be just a few days from now, will be the 73rd anniversary of one of the largest, most significant battles of World War II, the Battle of the Bulge. So my father was a medic in the Battle of the Bulge, and I still remember the stories he used to tell of the cold weather and the snow, and how when the Germans broke through the Siegfried Line, they decimated American forces. We lost thousands and thousands of troops in those few days. And how that the snow was just so heavy and so thick that many were trapped in their foxholes, unable to escape. Many retreated back to their to areas of safety and the lines behind. But I don't want to talk about my dad here today. I want to talk about someone else, a dear friend of mine, someone I got to serve in the Georgia legislature with. It was another young Georgian from Spalding County who was a pilot in the Army Air Corps. Now, Captain John Yates was not what you may think of. Most people think of a Army Air Corps pilot flying a B-29 or a B-25 Mitchell. What John Yates flew was a small single-engine Piper Cub aircraft. He was a liaison pilot. Now, most people aren't familiar with what a liaison pilot is, but they played a very crucial and critical role in the victory in Europe in World War II, and even in the Pacific theater. You see, this as a pilot, I have a lot of appreciation for someone who will fly a very small plane. I'm a pretty tall guy. I don't fit in the cockpit of a Piper Cub very well. That's why I've never actually flown one. But John Yates would climb into the cockpit of this small single-engine aircraft, which are still in use today. Many of them are used in the bush areas of Alaska because of how lightweight they are and small and compact. They don't take a whole lot of runway. But he would climb into this small aluminum airplane and would fly just above the treetops to draw enemy fire. He actually flew a plane to be shot at. Now, this wasn't like close air support airplanes we have today that have titanium shells that can absorb a lot of impact. No, this was just a small plane with an aluminum skin around the fuselage. But what his purpose was to fly close to the enemy, to try to spot the enemy and cause the enemy to fire at him, so our artillery and our other aircraft would actually know where the enemy forces were and where their heavy artillery was. That's an incredible job for someone to do, especially a young person, maybe in his 20s as he was serving in World War II. Now, after 60 years from the time that he flew those Piper Cub aircraft, I had the opportunity to serve with John Yates in the Georgia legislature. There's one thing I appreciated about John, as we find from a lot of veterans. As a veteran myself, I know that same feeling as once you serve, you always have this desire to serve in another capacity. In 1989, John was elected to the Georgia House of Representatives. I came several years later to serve with him. But John continued his fight for his fellow servicemen, for his country in the Georgia legislature, as he was chairman of the Veterans Committee and was always on the front lines of fighting for veterans care, for veterans, and to ensure that the government provided to veterans the care that they needed and the services that they deserved. He understood the meaning of patriotism. He lived as a patriot. And everything he did portrayed the idea of patriotism. One thing I liked about John Yates was one of his favorite quotes was from Winston Churchill. And that quote was, "Never give up, never give up, never give up." That's something that we can take hold of ourselves today, especially as Americans. We have a history of never giving up, of fortitude, of not just taking defeat and running away, but taking defeat and turning it into a victory. John Yates never quit serving. All he looked for was the ability to serve in the next mission that he was called for. And on December 11th this year, John Yates went on to his next mission in heaven. We're going to miss John Yates. The state of Georgia is going to miss John Yates. But I stand here today, Mr. Speaker, to honor one of those true American patriots who stood in the face of battle and faced the enemy face to face. And when he came home, he followed that desire to continue to serve. And he served until he passed away just a few days ago.